Leyla McCalla, welcome to Livewire.
Thanks for having me.
This album is amazing. I feel remiss that I didn't know about it back when it was originally released, but I'm super excited that Smithsonian Folkways is putting it back out because it is a gem.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Yeah, it feels good.
Yeah. I mean, when you released it in 2014, did you have a sense that it would have a kind of a second life like this? I feel like it's hitting a lot of people's radar for the first time right now.
Yeah, I mean, I always had the sense, I always felt that the poems themselves were timeless. And I knew that would carry the songs, you know?
Mm-hmm.
What I didn't realize maybe was where this album would take me in my life. And so it's exciting to kind of reconnect with the reasons why I started putting out records, because this is my first album, and you know, it was a big sort of coming into myself as an artist, and kind of claiming that about myself.
Well, was there a particular piece of work by Langston Hughes that kind of sparked in your imagination the idea for this record?
Yeah, I would say it's the song "Heart of Gold," which is the song that opens the record. I just feel, you know, Langston Hughes's poetry is just so full of nuance and power, and yeah, that's the song that I think I first really heard music. You know, when I was reading this poem, and then I was kind of like, actually, all these poems could be music, you know?
I mean, there's a lot of musicality to them as poems, you know, in
Right.
the written form.
Right. Yeah. So it's been interesting to think about that, because the deeper I go into his work, and, you know, I hear music in a lot of his work. It doesn't feel exclusive to the poems that are represented on this album, but, you know, it's been interesting. Even I did a show. It was like an album release show, and I've been performing the songs for so many years now, and I tried to, you know, stay true to the order of the songs on the album, and even that was kind of like, wow, my head was just in such a different place when I first assembled these songs. I'm like, wow, I had a really specific idea of the story I was trying to tell, and that story has really changed. And like, in terms of, you know, because I've been playing the songs for years. So it's been interesting to just think about, you know, how your mind changes, but then the songs kind of are still true to some part of your journey, you know?
That's got to be really interesting, because the first time you approached the album, you're working with a text that's 60 years old. And now when you reapproach the album, there's a new older text, and it's yours. Like you're your own archive now.
Right. I'm like, wow, I used to really be like wanting to be like super creative about songwriting, you know, not that I'm not, but I'm like, God, it's so nice to connect with that sort of beginner's mind.
Yeah.
And cool. I guess that's the benefit of this COVID reality, is like, we all have to kind of go back to the beginning of something.
Yeah. Right. It's sort of like first thought, best thought.
Right. You know? Totally.
How have you been holding up during the pandemic? We're reaching you. Where are you in the world right now?
I'm at my house in New Orleans, Louisiana, where I've been based for the last 10 years. And yeah, I'm thriving. No, I'm just kidding.
I was going to ask you what your secret is, because a lot of us don't feel like we're thriving.
No, I am riding this crazy roller coaster, I think, just like everybody else is. Yeah, it's just, I'm holding on for dear life some days, and then other days I'm like, everything is going to be okay. So it's interesting.
One of the things I've admired about your work for a while is one of the instruments you play is the cello, and you use the cello sort of musically in a way that I don't know if I've seen before. When you'll actually, you know, you'll strum it, you'll play it, like you really get the most out of that instrument. Is some of that stuff kind of your own invention?
Well, you got to get out there more because there's
Okay.
lots of cello
That's
players
a
doing
thing?
really interesting things, first of all.
Okay.
But
Note to self, expand my
yeah.
range of cellists. Fair.
So I studied with this really amazing cellist named Rufus Cappadocia when I was in college. Is kind of when I started to realize that my cello playing was taking me in different directions musically, and so some of that is my own creation. Like I, learned sort of fingerstyle guitar when I was in high school, taught myself to play guitar, reading guitar tablature, and then started to kind of apply some of that to the cello. But I really credit Rufus Cappadocia, my mentor and cellist extraordinaire, for opening me up to exploring the different voices that the cello embodies.
Were you a singer as well all along as a kid, or were you, because you were learning some complicated music, and obviously that was a big focus of your life, but was the singing part of it as well?
No, I was terrified of singing for a long time. Yeah, no, that was scary. But I think this album really brought my voice out,
Mm,
and kind of made me realize that this needs to come from my voice,
mm.
Um, it's just a calling, I
Mhm.
guess. And once you kind of feel that pull, it's hard to not go in that direction.
Well, you also have a really nice voice.
Yeah, that helps.
Thanks.
That's right. You know, like we don't know if Yo-Yo Ma can sing, but we know
He
you
probably
can.
can. I
Uh,
think everybody can, but it just takes it takes
was
a
that
lot of
hesitation
confidence.
partly because of like the classical music tradition, and you have this idea of one kind of music that's being made, and studying that, as opposed to like there's not a lot of like singing along from the orchestra while the movement is happening.
I think that I had thought of myself as an instrumentalist for a long time. I was gonna be a cellist, and I think that singing felt like this vulnerability, like it's just not my lane.
Mhm.
But I started experimenting with cello playing in different musical settings, and then was playing with a lot of singer songwriters, and started thinking of myself as a composer, and that's when I was like, well, maybe I could sing too, and it just felt like it opened up this whole world of possibility for me,
Mhm.
musically and creatively, that it continues to do that for me, and it's interesting because it is definitely it's like my newest instrument in some ways, but it's also like my most powerful one because
Mhm.
it's coming from my body, and
It's probably the easiest to carry around. You
Right.
it's
don't have to have a hard
definitely easier
case.
than the cello.
I actually was curious about that, Layla. We're talking to Leyla McCalla. Her album "Vari-Colored Songs" has been re-released by Smithsonian Folkways. Um, I was wondering what your experience was like as a young Black woman, like toting a cello around New Jersey and New York. I mean, that it's such a kind of big object in and of itself. I'm wondering, like, what was that like for you?
And then I'm a big object. No, I'm just kidding. um, I would say, I mean, it's hard to I think that there's a certain kind of tokenism that comes from being a Black cello player that I've become pretty sensitive to.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Like there's this sort of exceptionalism, like, oh, you're a Black person, but you can play the cello,
Right.
so you're more useful to society, or some kind of a messed up thinking like that. And I think that I've experienced that throughout my life, but yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that I have felt and experienced racism my whole life. I think we all have, but it's always different when you're a Black person because it's usually directed at you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, I think it was hard for me in certain ways. And then in other ways, it was just like, I got really lucky. I had amazing teachers who really recognized my talent and were interested in fostering that. And that kind of, drove my efforts, musically, that kind of let me have faith in myself, But I definitely, I also had teachers who were, like afraid to come to my house because it was like, not in the white part of town.
Wow.
In Maplewood. And I just, I had lots of experiences where, yeah, people are kind of disarmed because, oh, like I said, like you're black, but you play cello.
Right.
Because everyone wants to categorize you, once they can put you in a category, whether it's socially or economically, people feel more comfortable.
Right. One thing that's hard to categorize is the language that you might be singing in on a particular song. Like you sing in a bunch of different languages. Is that easier to learn a language through music?
I don't know. I don't know because I that's the only route that I've had. My family is from Haiti. I was born in New York, raised in suburban New Jersey, and lived in New York City for many years before moving to New Orleans. And I have visited Haiti several times throughout my life. So I've been exposed to Creole. And I had parents that spoke sometimes to each other in Creole, not always to us. And that's like a pretty classic, I think, first generation immigrant dynamic to have with your parents. And so, yeah, I really connected with Creole as a language the most through my music, through exploring these old Haitian songs and sort of dissecting the syntax and the words and it's funny because it feels like I know Creole like in my mind. It's somewhere in my head. It's just like I'm always trying to put the pieces together. And I've gotten better at that over the years through listening to so many songs and trying to understand the words. And usually when I have someone to help me, I can hear it. Oh, yes, of course, that's what it's saying, So it's been interesting. But I wouldn't know if it's easier necessarily to learn this way. I just think that it's, for me, it's like really fulfilling.
Yeah. Well, what song are we going to hear today?
So I'm going to play a song for you. This one's called Song for a Dark Girl. This comes from a poem written by Langston Hughes in 1927. And I find that the words to this song really seem to apply to our world today.
Yeah. All right. This is Leyla McCalla here on Livewire.
Way down south in Dixie, break the heart of me. They hung my black young lover to a crossroads tree. Way down south in Dixie, bruised body high in the air. I asked the white Lord Jesus, what was the use of prayer? Way down south in Dixie, break the heart of me. Love is a naked shadow on a gnarled and naked tree. Way down south in Dixie, break the heart of me. They hung my black young lover to a crossroads tree. Way down south in Dixie, bruised body high in the air. I asked the white Lord Jesus, what was the use of prayer? Way down south in Dixie, break the heart of me. Love is a naked shadow on a gnarled and naked tree. Love is a naked shadow on a gnarled and naked tree. Love is a naked shadow on a gnarled and naked tree.
Leyla McCalla, right here on Livewire. Thank you so much.
Woo!
The album Vari-Colored Songs has been re-released by Smithsonian Folkways, and it is available now. It's a tribute in part to the poetry of Langston Hughes. Leyla, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us today.
Thanks so much for having me.